Bug who kind of leads the emotional journeys. And the first books came out like Critter Fitter with Busy Bee, and then When a Ladybug Needs a Hug, or When a Ladybug Can't Hug. They've been out for about a week now, and our third book will come out, I think, on Monday, and that one's probably my favorite in terms of it's so important for kids because it's when I wear a mask, I say I love you. It says I love you. And all of these use animals in a way to help parents and grandparents and teachers facilitate tough conversations that kids maybe don't know how to put into words themselves, but through, characters, they can express it. And particularly with the mask conversation as a doctor, like that's a hard one because traditionally, if you look at the way that kids are exposed to masks are villains. And, little kids are used to running up to people and hugging each other, and they don't understand why they can't hug. And they don't understand why you would want me to be a villain and put a mask on my face. So I really wanted to take my skills as someone who's worked with kids quite a bit, both through my camps and through my practice, and change the conversation around those masks, making them less scary. And the book ends with a call to action of like, you can join the ant army and put your mask on. So if parents are struggling with it or teachers or whatever, they can be like, don't you want to be a part of the ant army? Like, you got to put your mask on. I'm going to put mine on too. And it empowers them to look at things in a different way and hopefully process a really scary situation in a way that's empowering rather than just traumatic. And I think that gets to really the resilience of women and the resourcefulness. Oh, and I used one of my good friends' platforms called Caribou, which is a digital platform that allows you to essentially like video conference read. So anyone, anywhere in the world can get access to these books. And thanks to a grant that Caribou got from AT&T for distance, anybody anywhere in the world can read them for free. So this was the way that I could use my psychological talent. I paired with another great woman who thankfully loved the project too, who has a branding agency in Chicago called Jane Agency. Her name's Brooke Foley. And then we put it on my friend Max's platform to put these resources for free to anybody who needed them and felt lost.
Wow, I love that. You just like took charge during this time. You put your thinking hat on real quick and move forward to help others, especially children. I think that's a great idea. You're right, because they're not sure how to handle this situation. And you offering these books for them online is great for them. So obviously you did, you accomplished a lot on your professional side of this pandemic, but is there anything personally that has changed or that you learned about yourself during this time and that you will continue to move forward with post COVID-19?
I've called it my journey of creativity and chaos, because my whole business went to zero. Where I was making money and creating impact was all in person. Whether it was going to speak somewhere or to run football camps for girls, like my whole business was in person. And it's so easy to look at the loss. This hit me right in Women's History Month, which is one of my busiest months as a speaker and a personality. And I watched all that go to zero. And it's so easy as for any one of us to look at that and just go, I'm broken, right? Or I'm beaten. And instead to be able to focus, sorry, I got the little thing that it was saying my battery wasn't charging, which is weird. But it challenged me to push myself and to find ways with, obviously none of the comforts of home that I might be used to, right? And in a place where, yes, I know people, but I can't even go see them. I moved across country for opportunities and connections, and then the world stops in connections. And so I just pushed myself to kind of do what I've always done, which is be somebody who's innovative, and that's innovative in business, and it's innovative in myself, and um, and to really process things, right? And I had a lot of people call me; they just needed to hear from me because they're like, we're so used to you picking us up, and I'm, you're stuck in that fight of, fighting with yourself, in that you maybe don't even feel capable of it one day yourself, and then you're like, you know what, other people need me, and it pushes us to the next level. So I think that's something that I definitely picked up through my career as an athlete, and it's really been reinforced in the reflection during this time.
I love your positive attitude, and I love that you are there for so many people. So, this brings the question, when you need someone to talk to, I mean, you're used to everybody coming to you, but what about you? Who do you go to when you need a pick me up or you need someone to make you feel a little bit better that day?
It depends. I mean, I have some really great friends, um, and whether it's connecting with a player or a friend or someone. I mean, my family is wonderful. It's like small but mighty. My sister is also a doctor. She's a doctor of acupuncture. My mom is just a warm, wonderful person. And then just even looking at partnerships, and like I said, sometimes it's really even just pushing myself to, when I feel lost, find myself in helping someone else. That's always where I've felt best.
Okay. So one more question during this pandemic. Over here in Arizona, we could still go hiking and we could still go to the parks. I know some of those areas are closed for you in LA. How are you staying active?
They are closed here in LA. Pretty much everything is closed here in LA, and you can't go outside without a mask, even if you do have to go out for stuff. So, thankfully for me, I've been helping by teaching classes for other people, which means that I have to do it too. And so on days I wouldn't want to work out, I have to, because I have people waiting on me, and that's always been something that I did for myself, for accountability. I first got certified to teach aerobics when I was 18. And it was my part-time job up until the day I left for Arizona. So it's been a little bit of a like a back to my roots. And then I first got certified to teach spinning when I was in college. And so I got not the fancy Peloton bike, but just a down and dirty indoors bike, thankfully through Amazon, and I will multitask with the best of them.
Girl, you do it all. I love this. This is great.
Yeah, a female athlete is a full-time hustle. You gotta have like 47 jobs. And I find myself going back to that serious hustle because the other jobs are just not even available right now, right? Like, we can't even do it. Let me check this battery, but I'm listening.
Okay. So, speaking of your multiple jobs that you have a hat for, becoming the first female coach in the NFL, how have you stayed authentic to yourself and maintain your individual voice?
I would say honestly, that is probably the biggest secret to my success. And that came from a good friend of mine who unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago now, and that was Terry Glenn. Terry Glenn used to coach with me when we were in indoor, and he was one of those guys who didn't say a lot, but everything he said really just like struck to the heart. So if you were smart enough to listen, right, he'd say something, you'd be like, dang, that was deep, right? And he told me before I went to Arizona, because no one knew, only the people really on my team and a really small inner circle knew. And that's why it wasn't in the media anywhere. That's why there were no leaks. That's why it was, literally the day that it was official that I was in Arizona, like, that's when it was announced, just because I knew it couldn't get out from anybody else. So I couldn't even really get a lot of perspectives. And TG looked at me at practice one morning, and you got to remember, it's like in arena, these guys had to go to their other jobs after. So it's 5:30 in the morning, and it's really hard to be deep at 5:30 a.m. I don't know about y'all, but like, I mean, you're lucky if my brain's even turned on. And he said, Jen, I've been thinking a lot about you going to the NFL. And the best advice I can give you is to be 100% authentic. Said, if you are the same person that you were with us every day here, the guys in the NFL will absolutely love you. But if you're fake in any way, they will sense it and eat you alive. And so at any point when I wasn't sure what to do or how to act, I just went back to being authentic. And what that does is it means that not everybody will like everything that you have to say, but they will respect that you're consistent in how you move. And you'll impress a whole lot of people who at first may not know what to think about you, but they are watching. And I've had that happen time and time again. They're like, man, you continue to stand up for other people and speak for other people and to hold the door open. And, you know, you're a little bit crazy. Like, you will say these things. And I'm like, yeah, because they need to be said. And, you know, it was also very much to, as I like to say, and this is the important thing for women in a situation or any minority really, where you are the person who is bringing a different perspective to the conversation. You are there to bring a different perspective to the conversation. And that is where diversity is a strength. If you go into that situation and you lose your voice, if you lose your unique vantage point, then you have become inauthentic because you're just trying to capture someone else. And the very best that you bring to the situation is lost. And I challenge myself all the time to make sure that I do that, whether it's, you know, seeing a room from the vantage point of somebody like me who's 5'2", or to look at a situation as like you've never included women in this conversation, or to say, hey, but you know, from the perspective of a leader in psychology, have you thought about this, right? Those unique perspectives are what are your greatest assets. And if you lose them, then diversity doesn't matter, right? It becomes whitewashed because you lost what actually could help other people be found. And it takes bravery, and it's tough, and it doesn't mean everybody will like it. And a lot of the times they may not even hear it, but some people will. And you're consistently, ultimately, over your career is what will be so powerful, because then everybody who brings you in will know exactly what they're getting, and they'll value you for that. You know, a room that you walk into that they don't know you, they may or may not appreciate it. But the rooms that you subsequently become sought out for or invited into, they will want you for that vision, voice, power, and purpose.
That's some great information that you just shared with us. I mean, like, I feel empowered. I'm like, and it's true. I love that you stayed true to yourself, because that'll take you far. And obviously it has for you. And you just have to be real. And especially nowadays with social media, you know, Facebook, and there's Facebook Live, and there's Instagram, and everybody posting these different stories. I think it is so smart to stay true to yourself and just be real, because that's what people love.
And that's what you're seeing so much right now. I think it's refreshing. You know, you're seeing people without perfect makeup and teams of people to primp them, and not in a studio, and you're getting a glimpse at, you know, someone's life and who they are, right? Like, this wall behind me is Venetian plaster that I did, right? I'm in an old Hollywood building that was built in 1932. So I wanted to honor that in the space that I created. And when you see that, you'll see a piece of me, and being willing to be really real with people is so powerful. And I don't think we get enough of it. And I think too often we're deterred from it by this idea of perfection. And honestly, perfection is not not reality, and it's not even approachable, and it shouldn't be the goal, right? Because what we think of as perfect anyway is really probably just a whole lot of Photoshop.
That is so true. I love that when you watch the TV shows these days or interviews, you see their house and what they really look like. You know, some of them I've noticed they've even gone on with no makeup. They're like, hey, this is who I am and this is what's going on. And people have embraced it and they loved it. So, I mean, that's a positive that's come out of this crazy pandemic, is that people I think are being more authentic.
Yeah.
So that's a positive as well. And being a leader is a positive thing. Obviously, it'll get you far in life. So what can you share with us? What is the definition of a good leader?
First of all, I think it's realizing that it's not one size fits all. You know, I studying psychology, and particularly sports psychology, I think I've read too much on leadership, and so much of it is prescriptive. And it was coming from a place of the people who had a voice once upon a time. And it may have been what worked for them, but what's important is that it's not a clear design of what will work for every situation, nor is it a clue of what will work for every person, right? I think the first thing about leadership is listening. I know when I got to Arizona, and I still get this question all the time, and I like cringe every time it's asked, because they're like, what was it about you that allowed you to command the respect of the players on the Cardinals? And I go, ooh, command it. Like, you must listen to me. Okay, well, first of all, it was the fact that I didn't try to command their respect and say, you have to listen to me. Nobody has to listen to you, right? They don't. You want people to lean in, to want to value what you have to say, which means, how can you lead somebody, first of all, if you don't know where they're trying to go or what motivates them to get there? So being a good leader requires, to me, the foundations of a relationship. You know, I want to know you not just as a player, right? Or an employee or a teammate. I want to know you as a human, because first and foremost, let's say we're talking playbook and you need to learn plays and we're doing an install. Well, you will 100% not get the X's and O's if your mind is at home. Mm-hmm. If your mind is worried about the fact that your baby is sick or that your wife is mad at you or any of that. So good leaders are tapped into their people enough to see and recognize changes in persona and then be able to address it. So hopefully you can move forward after you have a solution. And I promise you, as a leader, when someone will trust you enough to let you into their real life, they're sure going to listen to you on technique, right? Like, that's not even hard, right? If you trust a coach or a leader to have your best interest at heart in all facets, that opens up the conversation to be guided. And I think that goes so far. And I think we often talk about it less than we do, like, you know, being authoritative, or, you know, this is this kind of leader versus this kind. And it's like, okay, but each situation is different. Mm-hmm. So first, look at the situation, assess it for what it is, look at the people that you have, see where we're trying to go and what means a lot to them in the equation. And then how can you create buy-in so that everybody's unique talents and abilities are maximized and their liabilities are minimized, and we all feel good together about where we're trying to go and how we're going to get there. And then it's also creating a vested interest of everyone, not just you. It's not authoritative, like we have to do this. It's, this is where we want to go. We agree. Okay, we're going to do this. And then creating opportunities where your team can have ownership in certain elements, right? Like it may be the team song, it may be the walkout song, it may be the warm up, it may be, the mottos, the slogans, the team names, all things that create community. But if I think that I am in touch with my players and I'm not, and I just say, okay, well, this is our motto, and all of them are like, then it doesn't help. So good leaders really become good listeners and then good facilitators who can take in information and constantly take inventory on what we said we were going to do versus what we're doing, and to create buy-in from teammates so that they can help you create that culture and that accountability. The best team I was ever on was the Dallas Diamonds. We were a dynasty in women's football. We won 4 championships in 5 years. And in 3 of those years, we lost 1 game. And that culture had a mind of its own. We had mandatory workouts, and yet we as players set up additional workouts that everybody wanted to go to, right? It had nothing to do with the coaches. It had everything to do with us. And people sought our team out because it was such a great vibe that people were looking for that, not only for their success in sport, but for the impact that that feeling had on their life as a whole. And as a leader, we all have ways that are different to communicate that, or our talents. But then it's a matter of finding people who create a great staff and create a great team atmosphere together with you, and to not feel like it's competition. I want everybody on my team to be better than me at what they're good at. And I also want to be very clear and transparent, both on when I am the baddest bee in the room, and also when I am not the one, right? Like I will tell people very clearly, and it's funny because a lot of the times they think I'm kidding. I'm like, oh, I don't do that. And they're like, oh, what do you mean you could do that? No, you're right, I could, but it took you 20 years to get to how good you are in this. And I don't have time for the investment that it would take me to get there. I need your expertise here. I need you to be the driver here. Because one thing that you'll learn, especially as a leader, and I always say this to people, is if you tell me you're good at everything, I already know that you're lying about something, which I can't trust you on everything. And I'm going to have to slow play pretty much everything that you say.
Wow, that's some great advice. And obviously, we're going to take note that everybody needs to listen. You're right. And it's worked for you, and it's worked for your team, and the people that you work with, they have to trust you and they have to believe in you. And that's definitely one way to go about it. And I think that's great. Even if it's everyday work, working at a coffee shop, the grocery store, or coaching an NFL team, that is definitely important. It's a key thing to listen to what's going on.
Right. Because and listening allows you and the opportunity to move in real time, to not be stuck on something that you thought was the best thing or you thought was the right decision. Leaders make mistakes. You don't have to be perfect. People want you to be a good communicator though. If I make a mistake, I will tell you, you're right. That was not the way. How do we get better? If I respond in a way that I don't like as a human, I will apologize, right? And what that does is also allows people to approach you because they know it won't be punitive if they bring up a discussion or a question or even feedback to make you better.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, I agree with you. So we're going to stick with your with the team vibe here. And we have a quote from one of the previous players that you've coached, Kevin Mittner. She's a great lady. She's helped a lot, and she's a stickler about fundamentals and whatnot. She knows a lot about making you a better person, too, with the notes she left on your locker, the words of encouragement from what she sees on film. She was like a real good person to feed off of. So, I mean, a lot of this comes from what you just shared with us, about listening, about being real, and, just being a human being with the players. So how does that make you feel?
Anytime I hear that from one of my players, it warms my heart because I know what I really wanted for them. I actually helped them to feel, right? And in a place that's so commodity driven, right? Sports, players know it. They're only as good as their last play. There's a lot of criticism. There's a lot of people who have a lot of different agendas. And it's really hard to get close to people in that environment. And as athletes, we're taught never to admit fear, never to admit weakness. So even to discuss some of those things are really tough. And Kev was particularly special to me. We always vibed really well. He was in a position where he was taking over as being the captain when I was there. And it was particularly tough, like psychologically for me. I knew how tough that would be because the person who was the captain the year before was Larry Foote, who is now his coach, right? And so you have the guy who you were battling on the roster for ahead of you as a coach. And I love Footy. He is straight Detroit. He is straight to the heart, like that. He's that like, let's fight it out and figure it out kind of guy. But he would say like to Kev, like when you do that, it makes me want to put the pads back on, right? That's his way of saying, come on, Kev, you got this. But Kev isn't that guy, right? He would just kind of be like, okay, coach. And one day I said to him, I was like, the next time Larry Foote says that to you, I need you to say to him, then put the pads on and try and take it because this is my job. And he started laughing. And he was like, Coach, you see that? I said, I see everything. I can't say everything. But Kev, you need to own the huddle. And that's what every single person needs to see from you, is that without a doubt, this is your huddle. Everybody knows you know the playbook. Everybody knows you are that player. But now you need to lead with confidence and not let anybody challenge your spot. And he really was that guy. And then when it came out like that, that I wrote the players' notes and I left them in their lockers, like I never would have said a word. I thought the locker room was like Vegas, right? Like this was me and them. And it was a reporter who came up to me and was like, we heard you left notes in your lockers. Would you care to comment? And I was like, no, I'm not, right? Like I was like, oh my gosh, like here it is, like on national everything, that this female coach left notes in their lockers. And the reporter went on to say that, she had talked to Kev and he said in his entire football career, he had never had anyone care like that. And, I kind of chastised him and said, Kev, like, kind of sold me out on that. Like, I thought we were like in the inner circle, like the locker room was private. And he looked at me and he folded his arms and he said, Coach, that was special and they needed to know. And I went, okay, well, you own your huddle then, Kevin Minter, because that's what you felt. And you're right. I have no reason to take that from you. And we are still very close to this day. I saw him probably last year at one of the Buccaneers games. And as soon as he saw me, he bolted over and gave me the biggest hug, and he's in full gear. So he pretty much tackles me and everybody's looking around and he was like, oh my gosh, Coach, I couldn't even believe it when they told me you were here. Right. And those are the bonds that you make for a lifetime, which are, as I like to say, way beyond the X's and O's. And I hope to try and be that person for anyone that I have the opportunity to. One of my players in the Alliance League just the other day, someone asked him what was different. And like, I forget what he said, he was like, well, she's about yay high, right? So that's different. And he's like, her football IQ always stood out. And he was like, but man, she always knew like what we were thinking and how she knew that stuff. It was like, it was like she was cheating because she had the degree and everything. And I died laughing because it was like, that's the best compliment that you could give me, is that like she was always there for us and she knew what we needed and how we felt. Because that's something that, you know, was kind of unique for me in those situations. And
I
most people didn't know that guys would respond to that in a positive way, right?
yes.
Like we all thought that they would hate having this female there. And actually, it's the thing that stood out to them the most about me.
Well, I think you brought you know, obviously a little bit of softer touch because we're females and we're naturally like that. And that you took the time to get to know them individually, like inside and out, not just on the field, but, you know, also personally and what's going on in their world. And obviously those notes made a big impact on them. And I think it's neat for them to even bring it up and admit it because they're these big guys and like, you know, these pads. And then they're like, oh, this note really like made an impact on me and it made a difference.
Yeah.
So you, I love that you did that.
Yeah. And I have guys who's, you know, have said like, I still have the notes to this day. And, you know, one of the things I did and my last game with the guys is that I wanted to give them something, you know, and I remember I was in Oakland because that's where our last game was. And I kept looking for something that I could buy them. But, you know, here I am like, these guys really have everything that they want, right? Like, what am I going to buy them? And I ended up like with I can't buy something for them, but I can give them something. And from our initial press conference with the Cardinals, I had said how, you know, the most I had ever been paid to play football as a woman was $1 a game. And yet that your professionalism is not determined by the price that someone would pay for you, right? Like I was priceless. The budget was just $12, right? Like I can't help that.
Yeah.
And so I went and I got singles and I wrote on each one like their name and then it was like heartbeat because I always said the linebackers are the heartbeat of the team. So if you see any videos where we did this, that meant heartbeat. And if you watch the Cardinals ones, you see it like we would do this for each other. And then I said play priceless and I signed them. And so I gave a dollar bill to, you know, millionaires. And it was really with the, you know, when you learn how to play free and you learn that your worth is not defined by what somebody can pay you to do, then you truly get to the point where you're priceless. And I really told them all to play priceless. And I have had more than one guy tell me that like either he framed that dollar or it's in his wallet. Like Alani Fua the other day messaged me. He's like, yo, coach, I was going through my wallet the other day and I saw your dollar. Like, I just hope you're doing well. You know, and those things to me speak to not as much to me, but to the great men that they are and how often they're not seen for their complete selves. They're just seen for the tackles that they can make on a football field. And for anyone in sports, like, don't let your compassion and heart be lost because with these guys, like to build a true relationship, this is a hard world. And they are young kids. They might be in big bodies, but when they go to the pros, they are young kids who are being thrown to a world that has a lot of people with a lot of bad intentions. And so if you really want to have a great impact on their life, be a great human in their life and help them in ways that go beyond the plays that you're supposed to make.
I love that. I mean, you've made an impact with a dollar bill. You made that much of an impact with a dollar bill, and that it's a reminder for them, you know, when they're opening up their wallets or when they're looking in their locker room, or, you know, for me, I would have put in a plastic baggie and make sure it didn't get messed up and I'd keep it somewhere, you know? So that's great that you had that impact on them with that, and great idea that you thought of that. So I just want to know, like, what, you know, what accomplishment so far? You've done so many things, right? You've written books, you've coached, you do a lot for the community. What is your biggest accomplishment so far?
I hope it's my next one. That was a promise I made to myself when I was a kid. Um, was that I always hoped that my next accomplishment would be my best one, because that frees you from being stuck in just one thing. And it frees you from thinking that, any one thing is make or break, right? Because there's always a next chapter, and there's always a next adventure, and there's always an opportunity to evolve as a human, right? There was a time I would have told you that 2013 was, you know, was the best year of my life because I got my PhD and I won my second gold medal, right? There was a time I would have told you 2008 was the best time of my life because I left an abusive relationship, lived out of my car, and then went on to win my fourth championship, right? 2014, when I survived playing a year against men, would have been my greatest accomplishment until I went on to coach them. And then until I went on to, join the NFL. In this past year, it's been a lot of the conversational progress that I've helped have a voice in for not just myself, but for inclusion of women in sports, for collaborating with other powerful women like through She Is, and looking and making sure that we're amplifying others' voices through consulting for Madden and becoming the first female to be a playable character as herself in that game, right? Because that imprints on every single kid who ever plays that game, that a coach isn't just a guy. A coach is somebody who has knowledge. And that means that a girl can see herself in the game, and any boy who turns it on can too. And I have boys who don't know anything about me being the first female coach in the NFL, but they darn sure know I'm in Madden. And then even that conversation tied me into a community of female gamers where, I didn't realize the struggles that they were going through in the esports community that were so much like so many of the things that I've dealt with in my own. And then how do we help each other? How can we elevate each other? And where can we make each other stronger in society? And that's allowed me to do things that, though always, I think complement my foundation in football and what I've done in football, but allow me to, impact and interact with women in society as a whole, not just women in the football community. And to me, that means that there's so much more out there. So I kind of always look at it as like an adventure, right? And like, where is that adventure going to go next?
Yeah. So what do you have in the horizons for your new adventures? Like anything that you're working on? I feel like they need to write a movie about you, do a documentary or something, girl. We need to work on that. You're in LA. Let's make that happen.
Right. And, the storytelling is something I became really fascinated about, and part of the reason why I came to LA. So I could find that voice and platform a bit more. And I don't know what that looks like yet. I did agree to be an executive producer on a show called Fangirl, which is a comedy that talks about like what would happen if these two super fans of Michigan football become coaches. And I love it because it allows me to explore the conversation in the space, but in fiction, right? This isn't tied to my story or the people who have moved mountains for me or some of that. Like, this is fiction. Obviously, like, I have some funny stories that will probably find their way in, but it's not the truth. And so it's also an opportunity for me to learn this space and become interconnected in a way that hopefully I can make sure those stories are told. I had and it was a great lesson for me, actually. I had a rights deal at one point for someone to make a movie on my life. And as I worked with the writer, he wasn't hearing what I had to say. And the direction didn't honor the relationships that have been so pivotal in my life. And I pushed back and pushed for the rights deal to expire because I didn't want that story told. I didn't want people who had been great and significant to be altered to the point that they weren't good guys, they were bad guys. Like, to me, there's a need for different conversations, and I found that really formulaic and forced. And I'm not somebody who's going to let that be changed. And so that rights deal just expired in November. So I'm excited to really kind of dig in and see what it can look like from a better vantage point.
Good for you for staying true and real to yourself and not just getting hype, caught up in the hype of, oh, let's do this movie and it doesn't matter. Like you stayed real and you're like, this isn't going to be highlighting a correct picture of myself. So let's not do it.
Yeah. And importantly, what I really think is important is a message that we don't always get. And this is important for all the women on the call. I am a woman who's for women, clearly, right? Like, I want to elevate them. I want to support them. But for me, for women to truly get where we can get, we have to be great teammates with men. We have to develop relationships where we're allies to each other. It's not women at the expense of men. It's women and men making each other better and creating a more inclusive environment and conversation where we're not fearing each other, where we can be great to each other. And that was what was missing in that movie, right? There were no women who could give me the opportunities that I got because there were no women in those places, right? It took Bruce Arians and all of the Arizona Cardinals betting on me for that to happen. So I am not a great advocate for progress for women if I don't at the same time highlight how we can be great together. And that's what was missing, right? They wanted it to be this woman fighting her way through. And while I've fought, I found unlikely allies. And I think that is such a powerful story that we can do so much better with. And I'll tell you, I've been in those adversarial situations versus the ones where we were great teammates. And the great teammates ones were funny and awkward and, ridiculous at times, but we were laughing about those things as opposed to being, hating each other for them. And that's what was missing. And that's what I really want to make sure in anything that I do is highlighted on how we can learn, to have a really better relationship together.
I love it. Okay, so at the beginning of our chat, we asked people if they wanted to submit some questions for you. And I know we've answered some of these already through this chat, but I'm going to go through a couple of them. It says, why do you think there are not more like you out there? What is holding women out of leadership in sports?
It's hard for me to know that there aren't more women like me out there. I think that there probably are a lot. For me, it literally took getting tackled by men for me to break into the situation where we were in literally the locker rooms together, right? We weren't in the locker rooms together, but we were a part of the same locker room. And that changes how you interact. And so a lot of the times, part of what's hard, I think, and I always use this analogy, and you're going to laugh because it's men versus women, and it's not. It's just an ideal. I want you to think of a situation like football, where at that time, there had never, in the history of the entire game, been a female coach. So it's really hard to imagine it when, for example, football doesn't have parity at any level. So it's not like I played college football with the guys. It's not like we were, as basketball might be, right, in the same building where like the San Antonio Spurs were there and Becky and Pop could have a good professional relationship because you see each other and you know how each other moves, right? There's a comfort. For me at that time, like our football, it would have been like a mail order bride, right? Like, oh, there's a token female and let me hit play. So there's a big fear factor of the unknown and an inability for most to have like picked up the phone and called somebody they knew and said, tell me about her, right? There's that lack of kind of dating before marriage because women weren't, coaching at the camps with the guys, which would be an opportunity for like easy, natural getting to know each other and appreciating skill sets, right? It was, and that's why playing mattered so much because I was already in the pro world. And Bruce could call these guys who had been on my team, who I had coached, who I had been with, and I had a long career of having, coached at guys' camps, and there were those things. But for a lot of women, unfortunately, we don't have the same access to comfortable, comfortable situations where we can really get to know each other and then have that network of power. And what I've realized is, ladies, I'm going to put it out there. The way I see it now is that change for inclusion, right? And this is women and minorities in all dimensions, we can set up quotas for interviews. We can make recommendations. We can do a lot of those things. But for us to really get into the positions where we're making those decisions, we have to be the owners, right? We have to have an inclusive ownership group that is in a position to make the change because, it's hard to get somebody else to do what you want them to do, right? But it's different when you own it, right? That's why the girls' camps, I own them. I get to determine who my coaches are. I get to put women on the field because those were opportunities I didn't have enough of. And I also get to make sure that the girls are learning from the best women and men in the game, which guess what? Naturally allows them to get to know each other and see each other. And we've had great success in, current players then going to check out a women's tackle game, right? There has to be a relationship to pull from in order for that organic growth to happen, not the forced we're checking off a box growth, which people tend to resent. And I always have to remind them, like, that's not what happened in Arizona. There was no mandate. There was no call to action. You have to find a girl, and they set out to find one to check the box. This was organic, Bruce Arians and me, and him being a man who was in that position to make that change. And by the way, he didn't make it alone. He first got the buy-in from the leaders in the locker room and then moved things forward because he knew if the locker room wasn't behind it, I could have been Bruce Arians in a skirt and they wouldn't have listened, right? Because you can't force that kind of thing. It has to grow through interconnectivity and mutual respect.
I love all the advice. I wish we had all day to chat with you, but we are in a time limit. So thank you for answering that question. I do have one more question for you, and then we're going to do like a quick, fun lightning round. So the last question would be, what would you tell your younger self about, about growing up or the future, or things that you've already experienced? What would you tell your younger self?
Don't listen to what anybody else has to say in terms of what's not possible, right? Part of the reason why I wrote the notes to the guys that I did is I know what it's like to be scared. I know what it's like to be fearful. And I wanted the voices in their head to be mine because I knew what I would tell them. And I dug into what made each one of those players great and special and something he could pull from for a place of confidence. And so it's really easy for people to say what's not possible. And most of the time, they're not doing it to be malicious. They're speaking from the scar tissue of their own heart. from their own heartbreak, from their own loss, from their own lessons that were painful. And they think that they're protecting you from that. But the truth is that they can't see what you see. They haven't done what you've done, and they don't know what is in your heart. And so find people to surround you with who are not looking for ways that you can't do things, but who are actively helping you find solutions and facilitate conversation that will make you better. It doesn't mean that they'll always be like, oh yeah, of course you can do that. It's going to be like, huh, all right, that's interesting. Tell me what you're thinking, and let's see if we can find a place to get there. Because the first person that you tell an idea to will have the biggest impact on how that idea resonates in your mind and your heart. They will either cause you to expand. Oh, okay, tell me about it. Okay, so I was thinking this. What do you think about this? You start building that interconnectivity and problem solving, or to contract. Like, oh, that's a terrible idea. And you're like, and we've all had those moments. And so find the people who fortify you, who are for you, and really go after the things that you are passionate about in your life, because passion is a powerful, powerful force.
For sure. I totally agree. Thank you for sharing that. So we're going to pick some lighter questions real quick. You can answer in 1 or 2 words for our lightning round. So texting or calling?
If you need me fast, it's a text, but to connect, it's a call.
Okay. Favorite vacation spot?
I haven't been there, but I'm going to go. It's New Zealand.
Ooh.
Gotta go.
Okay. There. So ask for permission or beg for forgiveness?
I'm not begging for anybody, but I will ask for forgiveness.
I love that. You're like, I ain't begging anybody. I love that. So I had a question for you, and this, one I get asked a lot, and I like to ask a lot during interviews. If you could have dinner with one person in the world, who would you have dinner with, and why? We'll sum it up kind of quickly.
That's a great question, actually. I think I'd love to talk to Michelle Obama. I've met Barack.
I saw that on Instagram.
Yes, and he honored me at Women's History Day and or Women's Day, and he quoted me in a speech, and it was one of the coolest feelings. And yet, what I probably endeared me to him even more in that was he said to everyone, he was like, you ladies are so great to be here. I know I was your second choice. So if he's the second choice in any situation, I need to meet the Obama who would be the first choice.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd love to meet her too. People were just sharing on Instagram the other day, them reading a story together. It's been all over. So they definitely, and then she has her new, is it like her documentary on Netflix right now too, that a lot of people are posting about. So that's a great choice. I agree with you on that one. But Dr. Jen Welter, thank you so much for taking the time to sit with all of us today for Wise Woman Arizona. You shared a lot of insight. You've accomplished a lot, and I can't wait to see what you do next. You definitely inspired us women today. And the biggest takeaway was that just to be true to yourself. I love that. You're like, be true to yourself and be a good listener and connect with people. And if you continue, to follow that advice that you shared with us, I think that'll help take us a long way, in our careers and in our personal lives as well.
Absolutely. And for all of you on this call, you are all change makers. You are all in a position where you get to decide every day, both in your home and in your life and in your business, the people that you want to have a positive impact on. And you never know just how big something small can be, right? Like a note or a dollar bill. And I challenge all of you to look at the ways that you can use your influence in a positive and expansive way. Because if each one of us on this look to help 4 people and to challenge those 4 people to do the same thing for 4 more people, we are really creating exponential positivity and exponential change in our investment in not taking, but in giving.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jen Welter. We appreciate your time again. We're going to take that advice and run with it. Have a fantastic weekend. Don't forget to follow Wise Arizona on social media accounts. Also share this Facebook Live. It was on Facebook Live, so share it with your community. I think we have great information here that our communities need to know about as well, and the women in our community as well too. So again, thank you so much. And don't forget, everyone, the next event is the yoga event taking place on May 24th. So make sure you sign up for the emails to get some more information. And then let's hope that we all get through this pandemic and come out a little bit better on the other side.
I know if they keep California locked down too much, like y'all aren't far in Arizona, I'm about to be there because I don't know about this.
Make the drive. We welcome you with open arms. At least we can start working out again a little bit. All right. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic weekend. Let's see here.